Saint Anastasia, from the Golden Legend Lives of the Saints by Jacobus de Voragine. Anastasia comes from Anna, meaning above, and stasis, meaning standing or stand. For she stood on high, raised from vices to virtues. Anastasia belonged to one of the foremost families of Rome. Her father, Praetaxitus, was a heathen, but her mother, Faustina, was a Christian. She was raised in the Christian faith by her mother and by the blessed Chrysogonus. Married against her will to a certain Publius, she feigned an enfeebling sickness and withheld herself from the marriage bed. But one day, her husband learned that she was visiting the Christians in prison and supplying their necessities, dressed as a poor woman and accompanied by one of her handmaids. He shut her away, therefore, and allowed her almost no food. He hoped in this way to bring about her death, and to take his ease in the enjoyment of her dowry, which was very large. And she, expecting to die from one day to the other, wrote the most piteous letters to Chrysogonus, who, in his replies, did his best to console her. However, it was the husband of Anastasia who died, and she was set free. She had 3 very beautiful serving maids, who were sisters. One was called Agapita, the other Theonia, and the third Irene. All 3 were Christians. A prefect, who was smitten with desire for them, had them shut up in the kitchen of the house, on the pretext that they were not obeying the laws of the empire. And one night he went into the kitchen to gratify his lust. But the Lord deprived him of his reason, and he, thinking that he was dealing with the 3 virgins, caressed the stoves, kettles, and other utensils, and covered them with kisses. After which, being sated, he went out all black with soot, and with his clothing torn to shreds. His slaves, who were waiting for him at the door of the house, thought he was a demon when they saw him in such disarray. They beat him soundly and ran away, leaving him alone. He set out to see the emperor in order to register a complaint, and on the way, some struck him with rods, and others threw dust and mud at him and spat in his face. But a charm lay upon his eyes, and kept him from seeing his condition. And he was astonished that everyone made sport of him instead of giving him the honor to which he was accustomed. And when at last he was told of his sorry state, he supposed that the maidens had resorted to sorcery. He therefore had them brought before him, and commanded that they be stripped of their clothing, in order that he might at least see them naked. But at once their raiment adhered to their bodies in such manner that no one could remove it. And the prefect, at the instant when he was preparing to revel in the sight of them, fell into a sleep so deep that they could not awaken him, even by striking him. Finally, the virgin suffered martyrdom. As for Anastasia, the emperor handed her over to another prefect, in order that he might take her to wife, if he could force her to offer sacrifice to the idols. This man placed her in his bed, and then wished to embrace her when he was suddenly stricken blind. He was led to the temple of the gods, and asked them if he could be cured. But the gods answered,
"Because thou didst wish to ravage Anastasia, who is a saint, thou hast been delivered to us, to be tortured with us forever in hell."
And while his slaves were leading him homeward, he died in their arms. Then Anastasia was entrusted to another prefect, who was charged with the duty of guarding her. This man, having learned that she was very rich, said to her secretly, "Anastasia, if thou art a true Christian, thou shouldst do what thy master has commanded thee. He orders his disciples to renounce all that they possess. Give me therefore all that is thine, and go wherever it pleases thee. Thus thou wilt be a true Christian." But Anastasia replied, "God has indeed commanded me to give away all that I have, but to give it to the poor and not to the rich. But thou art rich. I would go against the precepts of my God if I gave thee anything whatever." Anastasia was then thrown into prison, to die there of hunger. But Saint Theodora, who had already won the crown of martyrdom, fed her for 2 months with heavenly manna. At last she was taken with 200 virgins to the island of Palmaria, whither numerous Christians had been banished. Some days after her arrival, the prefect of the place summoned all the Christians before him. He had Anastasia bound to a stake and burned alive. Then he put all the other Christians to death by means of various tortures. Among them was a man who had been despoiled of all his possessions and who repeated over and over, "Of Jesus Christ at least." you will never be able to deprive me." Saint Apollonia had the body of Saint Anastasia removed and buried it in her garden, where a church was built in her honor. She was martyred under the reign of Diocletian, which began about the year of the Lord 287.